from Johnny Cash.
Country music was built on steel guitars, smoky barrooms, and legends who swore the stage was the only place they ever felt truly alive. Yet when the neon lights faded, some of those icons revealed tempers, addictions, and cruelty that could make an outlaw blush. Picture a dust-filled backstage corridor in 1951. Hank Williams Sr. staggers through it wearing the same grin he flashes on the Opry, but tonight that smile comes with the cold click of a pistol. Moments earlier, he threatened to shoot a fiddler who complained about an out-of-tune string, and for the rest of the tour, every bandmate tuned silently, eyes fixed on the floor, praying the bottle ran dry before the bullets. George Jones learned early that booze could be both friend and demon. One rainy night outside Nashville, he lurched across his lawn with a shotgun tucked beneath one arm, shouting at Tammy Wynette to hand over the car keys she had hidden to keep him from the liquor store. Tammy sprinted barefoot past garden lights while George fired into the air, yelling that nobody would keep him from a drink. Neighbors swore they heard laughter between the blasts, the sound of a man who knew the legend of No-Show Jones grew a pattern that would scar country music for decades. Johnny Cash traded empty bottles for a wildfire. In 1965, he rumbled through California's Los Padres forest high on pills and heartbreak. His camper's wheel bearings overheated, sparks leapt, dry brush ignited, and 600,000 acres roared. Later in court, Cash shrugged at the dead condors and charred pines, muttering that he didn't care about anybody's yellow buzzards. The judge ordered $82,000 in damages. Cash paid, wrote more songs about redemption, and a mythic outlaw grew larger than the fire he caused. Some flames stayed metaphorical, yet burned just as hot. Charlie Rich fumbled a silver envelope on the CMA stage in '75, pulled out a lighter and torched it because the winner inside was John Denver. Viewers gasped, cameras froze, and Rich's booking calendar burned up faster than that paper. Collateral damage of pride soaked in gin. Merle Haggard proved prison doors swing both directions. He entered San Quentin a petty thief, exited a poet, then spent years firing musicians for missed cues or side glances. One steel guitarist recalled being dumped at a Greyhound station mid-tour because Merle caught him eating before Merle had been served. When fans asked how he kept such a tight band, Merle winked and said fear worked better than rehearsal. David Allan Coe wore fear like cologne. Honky Tonks loved booking the biker with the snake tattoo until he planted a microphone stand across a heckler's head for shouting requests. Coe's records overflowed with slurs. Even Outlaw Radio refused to spin, but controversy sold tickets, and the singer never apologized, claiming censorship was a bigger crime than assault. Johnny Paycheck nearly lived his biggest hit in reverse. One Ohio evening, he argued with a stranger about venison versus turtle soup. Words failed, revolvers roared, and the stranger took a bullet to the head. Miraculously, he survived. Paycheck served time, then stepped on stage announcing he had seen the light, though bartenders whispered he still carried a .22 under the coat in case enlightenment wavered. Not every weapon held lead. Tammy Wynette wielded pity like a switchblade. In 1978, she told police masked men kidnapped and beat her. Headlines wept for the First Lady of Country. Years later, her daughter claimed the story was theater staged for sympathy during a divorce. Tammy denied it, but journalists noticed scratches of confusion across the timeline. Loretta Lynn, idol to coal miners' daughters, ran rehearsals like basic training. Former backing singers said 16-hour days were common before big shows, with fines for missed harmonies and public tongue lashings for sloppy choreography. One quit after Loretta snapped a metronome on the floor and shouted that quitters could scrub motel toilets where they belonged. Kitty Wells smiled angelically on album covers but froze rivals with polar glaze off stage. Session players remembered icy stares when younger women hit high notes too sweetly. A fiddler once tried small talk. Kitty stared through him until sound check, then had the engineer mute his channel whenever her vocal entered, erasing him from the record. Willie Nelson's braids and grin conceal stories from early marriages when fists flew. His first wife, Martha, tired of cheating and tied him to the bed with curtains while he slept, so she could lecture him in peace. Willie laughs about it now, Martha never did. Buck Owens filled dance halls with Bakersfield twang and backstage corridors with terror. Crew said Buck judged loyalty by how loudly you condemned his enemies. One guitarist who stayed neutral during a contract fight found his amplifier sabotaged mid-set, feedback wailing like sirens until the crowd booed him off. Buck kept playing, eyes sparkling with glee that chilled witnesses more than the screeching amp. Conway Twitty crooned velvet promises yet ruled like a cold-eyed CEO. He kept ledgers of every favor or slight, then charged interest. A road manager once borrowed $50. Years later, Conway docked his pay $500, calling it compound courtesy. Tanya Tucker exploded onto the scene at 16. Hotel managers learned to count furniture before and after her visits. When a promoter tried enforcing curfew, Tanya hurled an ice bucket through a glass door, stomped across shards barefoot, and shouted, "That country never slept." Porter Wagoner shimmered in rhinestones beside Dolly Parton, but jealousy shredded the sequins. As Dolly's star rose, Porter's compliments curdled into threats masked as jokes. Dolly escaped by writing, "I will always love you," a goodbye wrapped in melody. Porter spent years blocking radio play for her solo singles until stations threatened to blacklist him instead. Marty Robbins projected gentlemanly charm until a drummer missed a cue. In rehearsal, he swung a guitar like a bat, splintering it across the man's back. Photographers quietly developed film of bruises, wood fragments, and Marty offering a fresh instrument as though the problem had been equipment, not rage. Jerry Lee Lewis earned the nickname Killer Beyond Piano Keys. During a 1976 Memphis gig, he grew irritated at his bassist's timing, drew a revolver, and fired near the man's feet. The crowd screamed. Jerry Lee grinned, finished the song, and tipped the bartender with the spent shell. Farron Young slid from chart topper to cantankerous critic. In later years, waiters feared his sarcasm more than hot plates. Reporters seeking nostalgic quotes got curses and maybe a thrown pen. Bitterness fermented until Farron ended his life, leaving whiskey-stained notebooks of half-written apologies. Lefty Frizzell's voice was angelic, but his drunken shadow smashed dressing room mirrors whenever someone called him a has-been. One night in Abilene, he cornered a teenage fan who asked timidly for an autograph, shoved him against a wall, and hissed that real men speak up before storming on stage. Television specials still crowed about wholesome values while executives quietly budgeted hush money for brawls, DUIs, and settlements. They knew every broken microphone stand or bruised backup singer made tabloid headlines yet also sold records. Danger, it seemed, was marketable. Fans bought the badass fantasy without pondering collateral damage. When Johnny Cash sang of Folsom Prison, they cheered authenticity, but ignored scorched earth he left behind. When Hank lamented lonely highways, few asked why his son flinched at sudden noises. Songs were confession and diversion at once. Even camaraderie proved sinister. Cash, Jones, and Lewis once shared a dressing room in Muscle Shoals, spending 2 hours one-upping horror tales. Jones bragged about chasing a reporter with a chainless chainsaw. Cash countered with wildfire court dates. Lewis produced a bullet necklace and asked if either wanted a souvenir. A promoter later said the tension felt like sitting on a keg of gunpowder with a lit match. Labels tried intervention. In '73, executives staged a secret summit in Dallas with managers, doctors, and pastors. They hoped to save careers and, more importantly, tour revenue. The plan collapsed before lunch. One manager demanded a private jet for rehab commutes. Another wanted the label to buy every bar in a 50-mile radius to remove temptation. Doctors walked out, the artists threw pool cues, and the meeting dissolved in cigarette smoke. Women around these men paid the steepest toll. Tammy Wynette's daughters hid under beds during arguments. Martha Nelson once calculated whether jumping from a window might be safer than staying. Ann Owens, Buck's ex-assistant, kept a diary of insults so she could prove attacks were real, not nightmares. That diary now sits in an archive, pages warped by tears. Cruelty also came through contracts. Buck Owens held publishing rights hostage from songwriters who questioned him, signing away royalties in perpetuity. Porter Wagoner convinced young musicians to tour for exposure, then deducted grooming fees for wearing matching suits he owned. Loretta Lynn's rehearsal fines financed luxury buses while her bandmates slept in vans. By the 80s, tabloids smelled blood. Jerry Lee's family tragedies splashed across supermarket racks. Johnny Paycheck's mugshot became poster art for outlaw chic. PR agents spun crises into comebacks, cycling artists through apology tours, gospel albums, daytime TV tears. The cycle itself resembled a country song: sin, confession, redemption, repeat. Through it all, the music mesmerized. Hank's voice still sounded like midnight prayer. Tammy's tremble promised salvation through heartbreak. Fans wrestled with paradox. Could melodies that healed emerge from mouths that wounded? Some separated art from artist, others sold collections at yard sales, unable to hear a twang without picturing bruised spouses or smoldering forests. Modern Nashville markets a polished brand now, yet echoes linger. Young performers study biographies filled with cautionary tales. Tour managers carry crisis binders thicker than set lists. Insurance underwriters ask if the headliner has a history of pyromania before quoting premiums. Even so, each steel guitar cry in a whiskey lullaby feels like an old outlaw grinning from backstage. Maybe country music was always two shows at once: the public anthem of heartache and the private symphony of chaos. The first plays through radios across America, the second crashes through motel walls at 3 a.m. while journalists sleep a floor below, dreaming of exclusives they will never secure because the label bought every room. During a late summer recording session in 1983, a weary engineer named Carla slid the fader up while the singer passed out against the microphone. Management ordered her to keep tape rolling. When he woke, he demanded another take and slurred threats if she ever mentioned the blackout. Carla later said the myth of perfection was patched together with splices of silence. Stories like Carla's floated around Music Row cafes. A drummer nicknamed Styx carried a dent in his collarbone where Jerry Lee's mic stand connected during a tempo argument. He learned to keep 12 inches of stage distance and both eyes on the piano keys. Producers became reluctant babysitters. Chips Moman negotiated with Merle Haggard by placing $100 bills on the console. Each time Merle fired a musician mid-session, Chips peeled off a bill, buying a minute of peace until a new hire arrived. The tactic bought enough calm to finish "Are the Good Times Really Over?", a lament about moral decay tracked over trembling session hands. Some performers recognized devastation and tried briefly to change. Cash's stint at Betty Ford inspired sober tours, though he relapsed. George Jones filmed PSAs about alcohol, even while he hid gin in the camera truck. Willie Nelson mellowed under a cloud of marijuana instead of fists. Yet ghostwriters were warned not to probe early years too deeply. Executives argued fans craved raw honesty, not saints. An internal memo from 1989 found scandals boosted airplay by 11%. Programmers called it the trouble bump. They surveyed record sales, not dental bills of backup singers or bus drivers patching bullet holes. The 90s delivered a safer rebellion. New stars wore wireless headsets and endorsed anti-violence charities while claiming outlaw lineage. Meanwhile, older roadies swapped tales of cut brake lines, broom closet hostages, and a forgotten night when Conway ordered a promoter locked away until he accepted a lower fee. Some victims fought back. Dolly built Dollywood to prove life beyond Porter's shadow. Tanya Tucker reigned chaos and comforts young artists today. Tammy Wynette's daughters filmed documentaries, turning terror into education. Radio rarely mentions broken bottles behind each chorus. The narrative stays simple. Tortured genius makes timeless art. Censors bleep profanity but cannot bleep history. Country keeps spinning, a carnival of beauty and brutality whose ticket booth never closes. If you listen closely to certain vinyl pressings, studio chatter survives in tail grooves. An engineer whispering, "Watch the knife," a nervous laugh, a slammed door rattling mic stands. Digital remasters clip those ghosts, yet legends and blemishes bleed through every polish. Scrolling comment threads reveal a rift. One listener writes that art is art and private lives private. Another replies that ignoring violence is complicity. A third simply types a Hank lyric about being so lonesome he could cry, followed by a broken heart emoji. The debate flares each time the algorithm resurrects an old outlaw track for a new audience that never bought vinyl but still feels the ache in a pedal steel bend. Country radio may sanitize histories, but backstage whispers keep the ledger honest. Consider a 2003 reunion festival in Austin when promoters invited surviving members of classic outlaw bands for a nostalgia set. It sounded golden. Gather legends, film everything, sell box sets by Christmas. Yet from the first rehearsal, the past pierced the facade. A steel player froze when a lighting tech fired a starter pistol for timing cues. He flinched at echoes of pistol cracks once used to scare him on dim stages, and the session never fully recovered. Hank's grown grandson, hired to sing harmony, watched the old man pack his instrument, muttering that some ghosts don't belong in daylight. Younger acts feel that shadow. One chart-climbing duo arrived in designer boots, bragging they would bring real country back. By soundcheck's end, they packed gear quietly after Merle's old road manager, 73 and limping, listed the price of authenticity: missed weddings, stitched scalps, and the night a bass player dangled from a 12th floor balcony to prove hierarchy. The duo skipped the duet. Their next single carried pop drums and zero references to bar fights. Veterans trade these tales partly to warn, partly to hold grief together like boards over a busted window. At a Nashville diner called Sammy's, every cracked booth hums with ghost notes. There, a retired fiddle queen shares stories that never made memoirs, Hank Jr. punching a mirror for reflecting his father's shadow too clearly. Tanya Tucker years later hugging a stagehand she'd once pelted with boots. Evidence redemption can flicker, however brief, in neon glare. Outside, Lower Broadway sells tidy caricatures of rebellion. Bachelor parties two-step past kiosks hawking "Cash was a good man" koozies. A busker rasps "Mama tried," while a glowing tip jar flashes QR codes, proof even outlaw ballads now run on contactless commerce. Ask him about Haggard's temper and he'll strum louder, drowning memory beneath twang. Survival, after all, pays per song. Technology complicates reckoning. Deepfake vocals already resurrect legends, letting software belt new verses in Hank's timbre without whiskey spilled. Labels crave perpetual royalty engines. Ethicists cringe. Will future fans stream AI duets of George and Tammy, forgetting the lawn, the shotgun, the frightened barefoot sprint? Algorithms optimize for engagement, not accountability. Still, listeners own the play button. When you cue Folsom Prison Blues, pause, acknowledge Condor's still gone from Cash's scorched canyon, then let the guitar ring. Recognition doesn't erase melody. It relieves the weight carried by unseen witnesses. That balance, joy tempered by honesty, may be country's next harmony. Picture a twilight amphitheater. Thousands clutch plastic cups, waiting for tonight's headliner to stride under LED strobes. Backstage, a newcomer, raised on streaming stats and crisis management seminars, zips a glitter jacket and recalls every lurid anecdote from elders. In that breath lives a choice: mimic chaos or craft a kinder legend. The crowd roars, the band counts in, footlights blossom. History leans forward. Maybe that is how the genre will redeem itself, not by erasing the past, but by confronting it song after song. Imagine future liner notes that list not just session players and producers, but also the reparations funds supported by royalties, the wildlife preserves replanted in Cash's name, the shelters funded in memory of Tammy's bruised daughters. Accountability could become the new form of authenticity for those still healing. If the journey today reshaped how you hear those crackling cuts or flawless streams, share this story. Let comments bloom with memory, debate, even healing. And when the algorithm serves another outlaw anthem, listen with fuller ears, ears that carry both the banjo break and the whispered warning beneath it. Country music deserves that depth, and so do the people whose bruises, burned forests, and broken strings made these songs possible. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.